We gather here in search of answers to life's big questions. We have come in search of understanding, in search of community. We have come in search of stillness and solace, hope and healing. Let this be a place not only of searching, but of discovery. A place of learning, but also of wisdom. A place not only of meeting, but of true connection. And let this be a place where healing fosters giving and hope fosters service. Let this be our prayer, that here we may create a circle of love ever expanding, ever growing, as we seek to know the very source of our being. These opening words by Sue Eyre welcome all who have gathered for our Sunday service this morning. Welcome to those of you who are here in the building at Essex Church. Welcome to everyone joining us from far and wide via Zoom or watching later on YouTube. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Jane Blackall and I'm minister with Kensington Unitarians. This morning's service is titled, To Whom It May Concern. Today is World Letter Writing Day, a day to celebrate and encourage the writing of letters, a form of communication and connection that is perhaps falling out of favour a bit now we've got smartphones and texts and FaceTime to play with. But this morning we're going to lift up the old-fashioned art of connecting via correspondence. There can be something special, even sacred, about sending and receiving letters. And I like this quote from Karol Jakowski, who says, "Because of their soul-to-soul sacramental nature, letters seem to bear a mysteriously heartfelt power that somehow makes the sender present." So perhaps this morning we can rediscover the art of letter writing and reflect on it as a spiritual practice of sorts. Later on in the service, we're going to hear a reflection from our own Carolyn Appleby about a correspondence with a friend that carried on for 43 years. And after that, in the spot where we'd usually have a sermon-y thing, we'll have an opportunity for you, if you'd like, whether you're in person or online, to tell us about significant letters you've sent and received. But this is, as always, an invitation and not an obligation. But before we go any further, let's light our chalice as we always do. It's a moment for us to stop and take a pause, to collect ourselves, set aside any agitation we might have come in carrying. It's a simple ritual that connects us with Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists the world over. And it reminds us this is proudly progressive religious tradition of which we are part. As the chalice is lit, let us settle together into this sacred space we've co-created. Let the cares of the day fall away for a while, and know that here is a place for quiet reflection, for a pause in our lives, and for breathing into our true selves. Let what is said and felt here add richness to our lives and call us back to living by the values that we share. For we are stronger here, held in community, as we share the experience of being human. Let the symbol of the chalice connect us to each other and to our common purpose, so that we may carry its light and warmth out into the world. Let us sing. Our first hymn today is number 43 in the purple hymn book, Gather the Spirit. For those joining via Zoom, the words will be up on screen, as they will for all the hymns today. Feel free to stand or sit as you prefer. We're a little bit thin on the ground. We do have help from Benj, thank goodness. So let's sing up as best we can. Number 43, Gather the Spirit.
Amen.
So let's take all of those joys and concerns, both spoken and unspoken, into an extended time of prayer now, based on some words by Lynn Cox. You might want to put down anything you don't need to be holding. You might want to close your eyes. Perhaps there's a position that helps you to feel more prayerful. Whatever helps you to get into the right state of body and mind for us to pray together now, and to be fully present in this sacred time and space with ourselves, with each other, and with that which lies within us and beyond us. Spirit of life, God of all love, in whom we live and move and have our being, we turn our full attention to you, the light within and without, as we tune into the depths of this life and the greater wisdom to which and through which we are all intimately connected. Be with us now as we allow ourselves to drop into the silence and the stillness at the very centre of our being. Spirit of life, God of all love, ancestor of the very stars and sun, you who embraces the vastness of space and us with it, be with us today. Hold us in our daily trials, our worry, our weariness, our grief. Keep us close as we sit with our truth, whatever that may be. Lead us to rest in the quiet, to find solace and renewal this day and each day through the changing seasons of our lives. You whose arms open with the spinning galaxies, help us to make room as you do for all that is. Open our hearts to our loved ones, our neighbours, all the beings with whom we share this precious planet. Lead us to reach out to others in compassion. Turn us towards one another in mercy, in reconciliation, and in right relationship. You who have seen the rising and setting of suns, of seasons, of civilizations, remind us of all we have learned from the history of the world and from our own personal histories. Give us the courage to face our mistakes and repair them where we can. And help us to understand our interdependence, our relatedness with all the other spinning lives around us, and lead us to treat those relationships with the greatest care. In this sacred space, filled with souls who shine like stars, this gathering filled with the soft sparkle of love and care, may we give thanks for this moment we have to be together. May our senses be open to the beauty of this day, this season, this world. The beauty that endures and which may yet lift our hearts, if only we are able to notice it and give it our attention. And in a few moments of shared stillness now, may we each speak inwardly, silently, those deepest prayers of our own hearts, all those joys and sorrows we came in carrying in our own lives or in the life of the wider world. Let us each lift up what is on our heart this day and perhaps ask for what we most need. Spirit of life, God of all love, as this time of prayer draws to a close, we offer up our joys and our concerns, our hopes and our fears, our beauty and our brokenness. And we call on you for insight, healing and renewal. As we look forward now to the coming day, help us to live well and be our best selves, using our unique gifts in the service of love, justice and peace. Amen. I'm to sing again now. Our next hymn is a lovely one. I don't think we've sung this for a while, but it got an airing at summer school and that's put it back into my mind. Number 24. 24 in your purple books. Come sing a song with me. Purple 24.
This reading is of adapted excerpts from Writing Letters, a Spiritual Practice by Redshaw. Are you looking for a new practice to calm the mind and connect with others? Try writing an old-fashioned letter. We were all letters writers once. We were written to. We had postage stamps, notebooks or stationery sets, pens or pencils, and an address book kept at a writing desk. These objects made a readiness kit for reaching out and updating friends and family. What would it be like to take 30 minutes of your week, or even your month, to write a letter to someone you miss. An old-fashioned letter on paper, with a writing implement, looking down at blank paper instead of up at a screen. Erasing or drawing a line through words that did not come out right. Inserting with an arrow or an asterisk afterthoughts or amendments. Signing your name. Sketching if that's your thing. Folding the paper. Procuring an envelope. Or better, creating one yourself from paper and tape. Finding a stamp. You must have stamps somewhere. Mailing the letter. Then not expecting or craving an immediate response. The act of writing with pen and paper is inherently mindful. No delete key, no keyboard shortcuts to relocate text. What do you want to say, to whom and how? And there are no links to follow or apps to scroll through, much fewer distractions. A key essence of letter writing dovetails with a spiritual or contemplative practice. The repetition of the mundane act, the reverence for the method and the affection for the recipient, and detachment from results. For every letter you write, you are not filling that time with 1,000 flickering moments of distraction. Every letter you send will be received by someone who will understand in a heartbeat that you have been thinking of them. The person who savours your letter may not respond, or not for a while, which means the act itself becomes an offering of time, attention, affection, humour, memories, or a reminder of a shared life. Each letter you send and receive is a tactile object, a talisman for and proof of relationship. Letters are held close, unfolded, read, studied, reread, stored, rediscovered. I can still conjure my oldest friend's handwriting because of this material past. How many people's handwriting can you recognise at a glance? For generations, family members, luminaries, world leaders, and the notorious left troves of letters for us to reflect on and to understand them. How will our children, our grandchildren, and beyond understand the details of our lives? Well, I don't imagine my children one day reading through a server's worth of emails. I do hope they will treasure my cards and my letters.
Thanks, Brian. So we're moving into a time of meditation now, and to take us into the silence, I'm going to offer a poem by Nina Bennett, which I guess was written in the lockdowns a few years ago. It's titled, How to Stay Connected During a Pandemic. I just want to add a personal disclaimer. This poem opens with the words, forget Zoom. Anyone who knows me will know I do not endorse that sentiment. Zoom has been a godsend to so many of us, and I will never forget Zoom. Directed to the people at home. But this poem is, of course, encouraging us to embrace the particular joys of writing letters as an alternative mode of connection, which has got its own special pleasures. After the poem, we'll hold 3 minutes of silence, which will end with the sound of our bell, and then we'll hear some more music for our continued reflection. So do what you need to do to get as comfortable as you can. You might want to get your feet flat on the floor, and the words are just an offering. Feel free to use this time to meditate in your own way. Forget Zoom. Order coloured pens, note cards, stickers. Wait 3 weeks to hear a thud as the package is tossed on your stoop. Select a pen, fuchsia or teal. Begin. Find a pithy, upbeat quote. Copy it on the card with butterflies migrating across the front. Write with calligraphy you taught yourself while awaiting your order. Push beyond I miss you. Try I remember the day we met for happy hour and you sang Maxwell's Silver Hammer along with the jukebox. Include praise. I hear your voice, true as a mountain stream. And an affirmation. Thoughts of getting together sustain me. Close with a wish. This can be simple, such as, I wish we lived closer. Dig through desk drawers for a stamp, and as you place your letter in the postbox, picture your best friend trudging through snow to her postbox.
Yes, letters do get a bit bent, so it's all right. This is called 43 Years of Letters. Is that about right? By Carolyn Appleby, member of this congregation, but she can't be here today. She writes, I had a friend called Nigel from 1976 to 2020. Until aged 68, he was one of the first I heard of to die of COVID. Originally, Nigel and I were boyfriend and girlfriend in an innocent kind of way. In 1977, he moved away from Guildford in Surrey, where I met him studying law and where I was doing my training to be a state-registered nurse. It was him who suggested that subsequently we write to each other. In fact, I was used to corresponding with friends over the course of my attending different schools around the country as I grew up. This way before the introduction of the internet. In the early days of Nigel's career as a solicitor for the defence, representing a client in the magistrate's court, he had an epileptic fit. There, when he was on duty, he felt very embarrassed about it afterwards. I don't remember what I wrote, but he found it particularly sympathetic and helpful. I felt I'd received it as a blessing to pass on, that my knowledge as a nurse had helped me to know what to say to him. It certainly brought us closer. So Nigel and I exchanged handwritten letters for a total of 43 years, including a gap I shall tell you about. Many of our letters were kept by both of us, and some of mine were returned to me after his death. I was touched to hear that they had been found in his bedside drawer. Nigel very much enjoyed lovely fountain pens and note paper, which later on he bought for me to use too, and even envelopes, which I felt rather uncomfortably controlling, though I did honour his wishes. By then, we'd been on holiday together in a house he'd rented at the edge of Cornwall, literally within sight of Land's End, but it didn't fall into the sea. Nigel wrote very descriptive letters. He had been sent to boarding school as a young boy for 10 years. He came from an emotionally repressed household, and he was an only son who got close to his mother once she was widowed. Nigel was very much a gentleman, and over many years made his house and garden luxurious, comfortable, and beautiful. He told me all about what he was doing in his letters. I could see the difference between my visit in 1985 and again in 2014. Once he settled down in life and lived and practiced as a solicitor in Lincoln, with his mother living in the parallel road to his house. When he retired at age 60, he carried on living there and made a good life as a guide at both the castle and the cathedral, and as a researcher for a local historical society. He wrote a book or two for them as well. Going back to 1985, when I was 30, our relationship hotted up a bit. I started seeing him more often, and we were quite amorous sometimes. My thoughts were often swirling around marriage, but Nigel wasn't the marrying kind. In fact, the following year, I fell in love with the one and only man I married. That was in 1987. Then, after I married Martin, Nigel, forever the gentleman, particularly a bruised one then, though he never said so, Nigel backed off. 10 years passed, apart from one visit from my friend in 1989, or was it 1990, with our letters tailing off after he had come to see me, when my ME had started to severely disable me and drastically changed my life. Our correspondence was to rekindle one evening after my divorce from Martin in 1997. So I rang Nigel out of the blue, knowing that he always preferred letters, but not knowing if he still lived there. His dear mother had recently died. So we picked up our correspondence again, and the Cornish holiday came after that. I expect I could tell you a lot more about Nigel, but I must draw this to a close, except to tell you that he left me a small legacy in his will. However, there is one more thing I wish to say in relation to sending cards. I had started to send only e-cards when my friend Irene mentioned that she liked choosing and sending actual paper cards and how rare and lovely it is to get them in the post. So I've taken up this as well. And if I know your address, I can find them, and I can find them in a shop. I send postcards when I'm away on my many trips as well.
Thanks, Juliet, for doing your impression of Carolyn. And thanks to thank you for standing in, and thanks to Carolyn for sending it in as well. She's on a train somewhere at the moment. Otherwise, she might have zoomed in herself. And I'd like to echo her encouragement to send long-form letters and cards, even long-form letters via email. As much as the physical handwritten letters have the beauty and the romance, it's still written correspondence and has a different flavour to the text or the phone call. I've laid out some notelets on the table down there, in fact, to get you started. So if you're in the building, feel free to take a notelet and an envelope away in case that gets you over the first hurdle. As Lois Weiss has said, the letter is never ill-timed. It never interrupts. Instead, it waits for us to find the opportune minute, the quiet moment to savour the message. There is an element of timelessness about letter writing. So we've got a little bit of time now, 8 minutes or so. We're probably going to run slightly over because we started slightly late. Time to share our own brief reflections and experiences of significant letters we've sent or received, or perhaps ones that we wished we'd sent or would like to send still. So we'll do it a bit like Joys and Concerns, except people from home can chip in whenever you like. But if you're going to speak in the room, do come to the lectern. Just to say, there's a balance to be struck. I don't know how many people will want to join in. I don't want to inhibit anyone sharing, but bear in mind how long you're sharing for so that other people have got a chance to speak too. And also to let you know, by default, this will stay in the recording of the service that goes on YouTube. If you want to speak now but be edited out of that, just let me know after the service so that I take it out before it goes online this afternoon. So if you've got something you'd like to share about a letter, now's your chance.
When my aunt died last year, I think, she was over 90, her daughter handed me a plastic bag, a supermarket bag, full of very dusty old letters. And in that bag, I found 2 different types of letters. One written in English from an American soldier and grateful that during the war, my father had been in the resistance, and he hit a couple of American soldiers who had, I mean, their airplane had been shot down. And so he hid them for quite some time. And so these are letters of thanks to him. But then in there as well were hundreds and hundreds of letters like this in this beautiful handwriting. This one has 12 pages. He had decided to join as a volunteer in Northern Ireland, where some of the army was being trained. He was a volunteer, wasn't part of the army. And that was in April 45. So until he got home in December, he wrote every day to his family, letters like this. He also wrote every day, I presume, to my mother, to whom he was engaged. We don't have these letters. So, but what was fascinating is that we know that they corresponded in English. She was very keen to study English. She was a seamstress, but she had acquired what was called as the assimil method, that maybe some of you know. So they corresponded in English. And if you know this method, it was very well known at the time. The first lesson was La plume de ma tante. You know this. Well, you might like to know that the equivalent for people who were studying English was My tailor is rich, which was which was incredible. One thing I haven't brought, because for some reason I keep on forgetting my mum, my dear mum. We had a very difficult relationship when I was a teenager. And when I went to live in Scotland, I sent her a card for Mother's Day, and it said in French, to my mum, with all my love. You didn't talk about love in those days. They were words that were not easily pronounced. And when she died, I found that she had kept the card. And to me, that healed so many, many things for me.
Thanks so much for sharing that. Anyone else like to share about that?
I've got a book here, and it's called Love Letters, and it's a very nice, nicely bound and produced book, and it has love letters from all sorts of people, starting with a letter from Henry VIII to Anne Boleyn, and it's really amazing. Centuries later, these people come to life. The most charming ones I find are the letters from Mozart to his wife. There is one, he says, "Dearest little wife, I was delighted to get your dear letter. I trust that you received yesterday my second one, together with the infusion and the ants' eggs. Ants' eggs. I shall sail off to you at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, were it not for the joy of seeing you again and embracing you. I should not drive out to Baden just yet, for Figaro is going to be performed very soon. And as I here have some alterations to make, my presence will be required at rehearsals. But I shall probably have to be back," and so on, and so on. It's really very charming. And then the last of these letters, that is a very short one, so I won't bore you too much. It's a letter from Richard Steele to his wife, written in 1716. And he says, "Dear Prue,
Sober or not, I am ever yours.
Thanks, lady. Anyone else in the room want to share about a letter?
I didn't think to bring anything. I'm not going to share about a specific letter anyway, but I have always loved writing letters. When I was a kid, I had a correspondence for years with my great aunt Betty, who lived some states over. I had pen pals at school, some that I met later in real life and others that always were a letter away. But I wanted to also mention a genre of letter writing that I perhaps created. I call it the airplane letter. So when I don't know, 15 years ago, there was a period of time where some friends and I traveled quite regularly, and we all lived in the same place. Perhaps with a kind of morbid idea that when somebody gets on a plane and flies away, there's a chance you might never connect with them again. I started writing letters to everyone when they were going somewhere. And so I would seal them up and I would say, do not read until you get on the plane, which would agitate some people. But I think that there was something very special about being on the plane. You don't have your phone. I mean, at that time, we weren't connected to the phone so much anyway, but you just have this letter and these thoughts. And it also was a way to kind of share with people what's meaningful to you about your relationship with them or whatever it is that's been going on. So I had kind of forgotten about that, but I started it up again a few years ago, and it's really a fun thing to do and something that, you know, when you come across them, because of course people then started giving me airplane letters. So I come across them and you kind of remember those moments that you shared. But all of this letter writing, I think when you really realize it makes a difference is when you see if somebody has saved something, like Marianne has said. And last time I was home, my 90-year-old grandmother we were looking at photo albums together, and we opened one up and there were no photos in there, just letters and postcards. And I thought, oh, she saved them. And I start flipping through and most of them were from me. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I guess, you know, it's worth doing, right? To continue to send those letters.
This makes me think of when I was at university for the first time. So that would have been early 90s. And it was just on the border when I knew one person who had a mobile phone. And we still had 2 posts a day. There was a first post and a second post. And every day of the holidays, because I was fortunate, I didn't have to work during the summer holidays. And it was a long time. And all my fellow students had been scattered to the winds for the summer months. And every day we would write letters to each other, and every day we would sort of send mixtapes. And I mean, goodness knows what I wrote about. I was just sitting indoors all day, really. There was nothing to tell, but somehow all this stuff, just to stay connected, poured out onto the page. And I would be desperately waiting for the second post to come with news from the Northeast, with a mixtape of indie records from the latest person I had a crush on. Is there anyone online who wants to share?
Yes, I wanted to share the story about my parents. They actually met because my mum's cousin asked her if she wanted a pen pal during the war. So she said yes. So she started corresponding with my dad. I think they married 4 years later. When my mum died, she asked us to burn the letters. She didn't want us to read the letters. And of course, we respected her wishes, but I must admit, I really wish I could have read the letters just to learn more about their relationship and what they were like when they were young.
Thanks, Liz. Is there anyone else online before we wrap up?
I just wanted to share one thing which the service has inspired me to look at some cards that I keep. This is a birthday card from my mother, who died last year. And it's helpful to know that I'm coming towards the birthday that she refers to. And there's one sentence that I think is really affected me this morning. She says, "Now that you are 36, I wish for you that at 63, you look back at many years of satisfaction and good fortune and forward to many years of sharing your special gifts with others. And I'm really happy that as I'm coming towards that birthday, I have this memory, that this blessing of hers to me.
Thanks, Sherry. So I think we'll wrap up the sharing at that point. Thank you for your contributions. I'm sure we can continue this conversation afterwards over a cup of tea. It is good to share these stories about the things that matter most to us, and that's another way to build connections too. Time for one last hymn now. It's number 208 in your purple books, an old favourite, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place, number 208. So just time for a few announcements now. Thanks to Ramona for tech hosting, to Sherry for co-hosting at home. If you're joining on Zoom, do hang around for a chat with Sherry afterwards. Thank you to Brian and Juliet for reading, and of course Carolyn for her reflection. To Holly and Andrew for playing, and Benj for supporting our singing. Thank you to Juliet for greeting, and Marianne for standing in at the last minute to do the coffee. For those of you who are here in person, please do stay for some experimental nutty rhubarb crumble tray bake, which will be served in the hall next door. There's quite a lot of it. If you'd like to hang around this afternoon, we've got Many Voices LGBTQIA+ singing from 1 till 2. That's free of charge for congregation members, £10 to visitors, led by Tatty and Gaynor. That's always fun. Brian's back with the poetry group on Wednesday night. Let him know if you're planning to come and what you're planning to bring. Next Sunday, you can stay all afternoon. We've got yoga with Hannah after the service, followed by a tea dance with Rachel in aid of Say It Loud Club UK for LGBT refugees and asylum seekers. I'd be really glad of support with the tea dance, whether that's coming along to stay and dance or helping with the refreshments or just welcoming on the door. Let me know if you can help out with that. The week after, we've got our Gathering of the Waters service, followed by a Bring and Share lunch, which Juliet is coordinating. So please let Juliet know what food or drink you're able to bring. Heart and Soul is online tonight and Friday, where the theme is Wow. We gather for prayer and sharing, and it's a really good way to get to know each other. And the community singing group will be back on every other Wednesday from 11th of September. So get that in your diary if you can. I did put a couple of flyers out on your seats today, one for the tea dance and one for the Better World Book Club, which is going really well, but there's always room for more. The next meeting will be on Project Unlonely by Jeremy Nobel. I've got a few library copies up for grabs. There's at least 2 still to take if you want to borrow one of those. The next meeting is on the 22nd of September online at 7:30. We'll be back with a service next week at 11. I've got no idea what that's about yet. I'll be as surprised as you are when inspiration strikes. Details of all these activities are on the back of your order of service in the Friday email. We've got a life beyond Sunday morning, so let's look out for each other, build supportive connections, and look out for each other as best we can. So just time for our closing words and music. We leave this gathering, but we don't leave behind our connection, our concerns, and our care for each other when we go. Our service to each other, to the world, and to the promptings of our faith continues. So until we are together again, be strong, be well, be true, and be loving. Nurture goodness wherever you go. And may that be so for the greater good of all. Amen.